Guys, it's Peggy Kaczynski. I retired early from my 20-something career as a sportscaster, covering the Bulls, the Bears, the Blackhawks, the Cubs, the White Sox, and really every other college and high school team in Chicago. So what do you do after that? Well, you start a podcast. That's what I did with my teenage son, Jason. And the result is The Sportscaster and Her Son. Yes, I'm the baby boomer, a mom. We don't get along. We don't have a lot in common, but we both share a love for sports. And we always have great sports conversation. Even better, our guests in the interviews. So come check us out. We're on Podbean and the Barroom Network, or really wherever you get your audio. The Sportscaster and Her Son podcast. See you there.
Mic off. What's up, and welcome back to BarDown Blackhawk Talk, episode number 8, presented by the Barroom Network. My name is Vinnie Parisi, and this is my brother Joey Parisi. And Joseph, for some reason, my mic didn't unmute when the commercials ended. What am I going to do?
Yeah, I don't know. It's the first show jitters apparently all over again, huh?
I have no jitters whatsoever. In fact, I was going to ask you a quick question before we get into things. I'm craving pizza, man.
Pizza?
I just am obsessed with the thought of pizza right now. So, Giordano's or Lou's?
Giordano's. Don't even start with the Lou's. Chunky. I don't want half a tomato on every slice of pizza that I have. Yeah, give me both deep dish, but nothing like a fresh 900-degree right out of the oven Giordano's. Burn your roof of your mouth. It's okay because it tastes so damn good.
Are you okay with a good New York slice every now and then?
Yeah, actually, I prefer it, but yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I just love pizza, and before we get into sports, I just wanted to talk about pizza for a couple.
Yeah, and you say you got no jitters. Let me tell you, I got the jitters. I have the jitters. There's nothing like waking up on a game day for your team, especially in the playoffs. It's an emotion that you can't replicate unless it's happening to you. And like, I am so jacked. I'm ready to talk about the playoffs. My team plays game 3 tonight. Can't wait to get into that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, the jitters for me are starting to come in because I'm so excited about our guest. We have a guest, Jimmy Lynch. He is the site expert of Blackhawk Up and Oil on White of the Fansided Networks. So we would like to welcome him on in period number 1. And welcome to the show, Jimmy Lynch, site expert of Blackhawk Up and Oil on White, and your contributor at the Windy City. So we're kind of teammates. We do all the things with Fansided. Jimmy, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. I'm not going to lie. I do have the jitters. First podcast, but also I wasn't prepared to talk about pizza. And I got to say, I'm going to go with Lou's over Giordano's. That's just my own personal take. But thank you for having me.
Yeah, I know I'm in the minority there. Everyone who, especially people in like our family, you ask them, they're all taking Lou's. But for me, it's just like, I don't know, those chunky tomatoes. I can't do that on my deep dish.
I don't like arguing over pizza. I just like eating pizza and talking about it. Like, I want both. Lou's and Giordano's, feed them to me right now.
For sure.
So, Jimmy, we're so thrilled to have you on, man. You said this is your first podcast you've ever done. That's exciting.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I mean, I've done like a couple with my friends on and off, but this is the first real one. So thank you.
Absolutely, no problem. So I wanted to get into what I believe is your favorite team, the Chicago Blackhawks.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
the expert of Blackhawk Up, the incredibly successful and amazing fan-sided Blackhawk site. And when you talk about the Blackhawks, you talk about number 88, Patrick Kane. I would love your analysis and opinion on how he went about his 2020-21 season.
I felt like it was just another year for Patrick Kane. You know, he puts up more than a point per game again. He seemed to be passing the puck a lot more than he was shooting this year, which I was a little iffy about. I think Patrick Kane's going to retire a Blackhawk. I think he's going to be there forever. I think he's going to pass up a lot of the all-time greats when it comes to like most games played, most points, most goals. I mean, how can you not expect Patrick Kane just to play for another 10 or 6, like 10 years with the team, you know? So awesome.
Absolutely. I love watching him play. And he seems to kind of be embracing some of the records he's breaking now. Like he enjoys that lure that's coming with, you know, scoring the 400th goal or scoring 1,000 points, all that kind of stuff. It's been fun to watch. I mean, as a Chicago guy myself, he's starting to kind of get in that tier with he'll never reach Michael Jordan or probably even Walter Payton, but he's starting to be in that Mount Rushmore of Chicago athletes conversation, don't you think?
I think so. And especially, I mean, in Chicago Blackhawks history, I think at the end of the day, he will probably retire as like Mr. Blackhawk. I think, like, no disrespect to Stan Mikita or Bobby Hall or anyone that came before, but Patrick Kane's won 3 Stanley Cups, Conn Smythe, Art Ross. Like he's won so many trophies with the team. And, you know, everyone kind of talks about how like, oh, the Blackhawks are wasting his prime, but it's like, if his prime didn't include him winning 3 championships and a Conn Smythe trophy and Calder and all those other accolades, like, I guess a prime wasted right now wouldn't be the end of the world when all that was before, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And if they're all close to each other in points, Mikita, Hall, and Kane, the 3 championships push Kane ahead.
For sure.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you just said, Jimmy, especially like when Vinny said he might not be up there with the Jordan, but I think he 100% is. Like, I agree he's going to finish his career as the best Blackhawk to ever play. And like you said, no disrespect to Stan Mikita, Bobby Hall, and all those other great Blackhawks we've seen, Patrick Kane is going to be the guy. He's, you know, him and Taves both going to have statues. We know that. And it's going to be like 20 years from now, who's the best player to ever play for the Chicago Blackhawks? The answer is going to be Patrick Kane without a doubt. But I kind of wanted to ask you a question about the goaltending that we've seen this year. And we have Kevin Lankinen and Malcolm Subban. Do you think that that's a good tandem to have? Do you think Lankinen's the guy? Or do you think they need to look somewhere else? And do you think Malcolm Subban is a suitable backup? Do you think he's an NHL guy? What are your thoughts on the goalie tandem that we see?
I mean, there's a million thoughts that come to mind when you talk about the Blackhawks goalies, just because, like, Malcolm Subban's a decent goalie. I think that when the year started, I probably saw him as being the guy, and then the year started and he wasn't there. The rebounds were horrible. Colin Delia was just, you know, like nowhere to be found. He just wasn't really playing well. And then Kevin Lankinen just got in the net, and then he just played there, and he just kept playing to the point where they couldn't take him out of the net. I don't think that any 3 of those guys are really a championship team goalie. You know, I was talking with a couple guys on Blackhawk Up the other day, and we were saying how, like, you watch the playoffs right now and you see the goalies playing, they're all playing out of their mind. And I don't see any one of those 3 guys being able to do that for the Blackhawks. I think Lankinen could be a really good backup, or like a 1B goalie that can play like 30 to 35 to 40 games. But I don't think the Blackhawks starter for the futures in the organization yet.
Very good. Very good to note. I agree completely that Malcolm Subban, the biggest thing for me is his rebound control, and it just never gets better. I saw it in Boston. He played better in Vegas, and we've talked about this in previous shows. Playing behind Marc-Andre Fleury was the best we've ever seen, and I think it's the best we will ever see out of Malcolm Subban.
And it's also, Vegas is really good at taking care of rebounds as a defensive unit, and the forwards chip in. And so I'm sure playing as a backup on a team like that, he could be successful. The Blackhawks are not good defensively.
That's a fair point. I think all 3 goalies do deserve a lot of credit, because you're playing in front of the Blackhawks defense, which, I mean, you guys know it's not good. They're left out for dry most nights, and it seems like the Blackhawks kind of knew that going into the season, that these guys were going to be competing in front of a losing cause most nights. So I think they do deserve some credit, and I don't know if any goalie really would have put them over the edge. But I think they got to look elsewhere for a goalie at the end of the day.
For sure, and a good place to start could be the draft. I don't know where you lie on drafting goalies high, but what are your thoughts on the 2021 NHL draft as a whole, not just goalies? Could you see them taking a forward, a defenseman? It's kind of a hit or miss draft this year. Like the scouting reports are, there's not this generational guy at the top, but there's a lot of defensemen in the top 10. There's guys like Owen Power, Luke Hughes. I know there's different things that could go on with the lottery. If let's say the Blackhawks are picking in the top 10 or even top 15, what would you like to see them address?
I mean, it's a really interesting thing because the NHL draft's not like the NFL where you get a guy and that guy's guaranteed to start play next year and they're going to be a real game changer for the organization. Alex Nylander was an 8th overall pick. Adam Bockfist was an 8th overall pick, and he's still kind of finding his way. I feel like unless the Blackhawks do land a draft lottery pick, I think you just take the best player available and then just go from there. I don't think even Drew Commesso, the Blackhawks goalie that they drafted last year, we're not going to see him for another, 2 or 3 years, if that.
Yeah, at least.
So the Blackhawks can really do anything with the pick. I wouldn't even mind them trading it and then, I don't know, just moving back in the draft, because this year it just seems like I read a couple of different draft reports on different players and everything's jumping around so much. Like a guy that was projected in the top 5 dropped down, and then a guy from the top 15 is now up in the top 5. It's such a fluky thing right now. I don't know if I'm sold on any one guy.
Yeah, it's also kind of hard too because not everyone played a full season this year. There are different CHL leagues that, the QMJHL, the OHL, and the WHL. All those leagues had a different amount of games, and there's obviously talent disparity. The OHL is probably the best of the 3 on a year-by-year basis. Every now and then the QMJHL will produce a Nico Hischier or a Alexis Lafreniere or something like that. But actually, I believe he was the OHL. But either way, the talent kind of despairs from year to year. And this year, it's hard to get a gauge because of who's played, who's not, different college conferences playing certain amounts of games. So it's going to be hard to kind of figure out the order.
For sure. And I think the Blackhawks, the one area they do really well is getting those undrafted free agents. You know what I mean? Henrik Borgstrom, the guy that they just traded for from Florida, I think that he could be in the lineup next season. You just kind of look up and down their lineup, and Pius Suter, Dominic Kubalik, all these guys they're finding. And I just think that the Blackhawks haven't really done it at the NHL draft recently, and they're finding ways to get guys to be in their lineup and kind of fill things up. Whether or not they really hit or miss on the draft right now isn't really going to be a big part of the rebuild that they want to be done in a year or two, which that's another can of worms.
Yeah, definitely. So, Jimmy, I see you do work with Oil on White in addition to your Blackhawk Up. So I want to ask you a question about the Edmonton Oilers here. Going into the playoffs, we all know McDavid and his season he finished with 105 points. Right below him, you have Leon Draisaitl in second place with 84 points. I just want your take on going into the playoffs. Do you think depth scoring could be an issue for the Edmonton Oilers with their third scoring forward being Ryan Nugent-Hopkins at only 35 points?
I think 100%, and I read a stat the other day that McDavid broke a record having factored in on 58% of the Oilers' goals this season. I don't know if that's really a good record to break because you want to have those depth scores. The Blackhawks, I want to say when they were winning their championships, Patrick Kane was in the mix with Patrick Sharp, Marian Hossa, Jonathan Toews. You want to have guys up and down your lineup that can score. And I mean, maybe the Oilers' plan is just to let McDavid be McDavid and then let everything else work itself out. But we saw how that worked last year in the bubble. The Blackhawks were not a better team than Edmonton last year in the bubble. They were gifted that spot, and I don't know if I really count that as a playoff year for the Blackhawks, but you see that a team like that can beat them. So how is Edmonton going to be able to, find those guys that can score goals up and down through their lineup?
Exactly. I agree completely. I mean, we all know the skills that McDavid has and what he can bring. It's not necessarily about stopping him, but I mean, if you can contain him, then if the depth scoring isn't there, like you said, we've seen it with all the past championship teams, you need that depth scoring. So I just wanted your take on that, and I think you answered it pretty perfectly.
And it's crazy, too. You brought up those old Hawk teams where Patrick Kane was always in the mix with the Sharps, the Hosas, the Taves. And the Oilers don't have that. Now, McDavid is so much better than everybody else that he could kind of get a team into the playoffs if he has a year like that where he has 30 points in the last 10 days of the season, which is just banana lands. And Patrick Kane, he wasn't the Kane he is now, or even over the last 3 or 4 years that he was on that Blackhawks team. He is better now than he ever was in his early portions of his career, but the team's never been worse. And so you kind of hope that doesn't end up being the case with the Oilers, because I don't know about you guys, I'm super jacked about watching them play in the playoffs tonight against the Winnipeg Jets. And I want that every year. As a hockey guy myself, like, I root for the league above all else. Like, we all have our favorite teams and teams we cover and cheer for. But for me, it's like watching Connor McDavid is a treat. And it bugs me if this team can't ever figure out a way to get it done just because they refuse to surround him with anyone other than Draisaitl.
Leon Draisaitl is a great player. I feel like if he wasn't on McDavid's team, we would be talking about him a lot more around the entire NHL.
Absolutely.
And I think like the biggest question mark for them is if they do make it to round 2 against like Toronto, just assuming that that's how it works out.
Yeah.
McDavid's and Matthews. But then you look at Toronto's team, Mitch Marner, Nylander, Tavares, that list goes on and on and on with great players, whereas Edmonton, it's a completely different story. Does McDavid match up against 4 or 5 of those guys, and can he single-handedly do it? I mean, yeah, but then give him the Conn Smythe right now, because I just feel like Edmonton needs to kind of do a better job surrounding him with better talent. I don't know if they will, though. That's kind of the question of, like, can they actually bring in more talent, which you would think they can.
Sure. And during the regular season, and Joe, you might remember this game specifically, we watched it together. They were playing the Oilers, the Leafs and the Oilers. It was relatively early. And one of the commentators made a comment that intrigued me when they got to 3-on-3 overtime. And I know there's going to be no 3-on-3 in the playoffs, but it's a scope of the entire group of players as a whole. You take your chances. If you're the Leafs, you take your chances against McDavid with Matthews. And if nobody scores, you like Tavares and Nylander hopping over the boards over whoever Edmonton sends out after McDavid and Draisaitl are done. The mismatch in that is just incredible. Like, McDavid's the best by far, and you can even say Draisaitl's the second best. Right now, I have him as the second best player in the league. I didn't want to say it last year. I was a little scared. This year, it's like they play on different lines. So unless you're including the power play, that I guess you can use that as a knock on Draisaitl because they played together there. But I want to know what your thoughts are just on the Oilers matchup against the Jets in the playoffs in the first round.
So, I mean, the Jets, they finished the season with like a losing streak of how many games? Like 7?
Yeah, they were bad.
Yeah. The Edmonton versus the Jets during the year, they were 7-2. So that's pretty good. Obviously the playoffs are a completely different thing. I feel like Edmonton should have a pretty easy series against them. I watched your guys' last podcast, Joey. I think, did you say it's going to be a sweep?
I think I did have it as a sweep. Did I, Vin?
Yeah.
I'm very confident in the Oilers this year, especially against the Jets. Like, I hate when a team stumbles into the playoffs, and I feel like that's exactly what Winnipeg did. And Edmonton, they really impressed me toward the end of the year. Like, yeah, McDavid went on his run with like 1 million points in the last 10 games, but I mean, I just don't see it being a close series. And then even in the next round, you mentioned that if it lines up being Toronto, I have them beating Toronto as well, because I think McDavid is capable of outmatching them to a point where, he might steal the series. Now, as we get into whoever they play, whether it be Colorado, Carolina, Boston, Pittsburgh, whoever they play in that third round is really when I feel they're going to get tested the most. But out of this North Division, I think it's theirs to win.
Me and Joey are both pretty stubborn. I would consider us both stubborn human beings. And McDavid was so good at the end of the season that Joey flip-flopped his Winnipeg Jets and Edmonton Oilers prediction.
Yeah, 2 shows ago I said that I think Winnipeg would win, and then I full-heartedly flipped more than you could, and now I don't even think it's going to be really close. I think Edmonton has this one.
It comes down to goaltending at the end of the day. Like, I didn't realize it, but Mike Smith has only really been on one deep playoff run, and it was in 2012 with Phoenix.
Yeah.
So Mike Smith, I mean, he's having a really good season. He's 39 years old.
Mm-hmm.
If he can play well, because outside of that, the Oilers' goaltending has been really iffy as of late. If he can just kind of like put the team on his back and play good, and obviously McDavid's going to score, they're going to score goals. The North Division's always kind of pegged as the division that, their defense isn't really, it's not there. And when your top 2 teams are Edmonton and Toronto and there's offensive teams, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. But if the goaltending can perform, then yeah, I mean, Edmonton very well could make a run all the way to like the quote unquote conference finals. But it just kind of depends on if the puck does go into the back of the net, because it also goes the same way. Like Connor Hellebuyck's didn't he win the Vezina last year? So it's, if you can have 4 good games, it's a completely different story.
Yeah, he came in second, I believe, to Andrei Vasilevsky. But yeah, he had a phenomenal year last year, and I agree. Like Connor Hellebuyck is an amazing goalie. He's probably the best American goalie in the league right now. With that being said, I don't think goaltending matters when you're going up against just Draisaitl and McDavid.
I mean, as long as Mike Smith, if he's 80% of Hellebuyck, then the Oilers have a serious chance to win this series. Because Hellebuyck, they have the advantage in the goaltending department. But, I mean, I don't know if I would say it means nothing. If McDavid is perfectly capable of being robbed on occasion, he still plays.
But I don't see a goalie like coming out and just shutting down McDavid. Or a defense for that matter. And Winnipeg certainly doesn't have that defense.
Jimmy, do you like Edmonton in the series?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think they're going to win the series. But it's kind of similar to last year when they played the Blackhawks in the play-in. It's like if they have one bad game, I mean, I don't want to discredit McDavid or anyone, but it's like those Canadian markets, like Toronto's the same way. If they have one bad game, it could go either way, just because those players, they're going to get in their heads, and then the media is going to get in their heads. And even though there's no fans in the stands in Canada, there's a little bit of just some kind of lore about if they lose one game, are they going to be able to answer and turn around? Like, I think the Blackhawks got into McDavid's head. They won a game, like they won the first game kind of fluky. And then all of a sudden they rode their way through the series because they just had a little bit better leadership and were able to kind of like hunker down and win. But yeah, McDavid, he should have an easy go against Winnipeg. And then the news just kind of broke a little bit ago that Pierre-Luc Dubois is not playing. Someone else, Ekholm or someone, is not going to play for Winnipeg tonight either. So the matchup is favoring Edmonton for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not even sure Nikolai Ehlers is 100% healthy yet either for Winnipeg.
Sorry.
So one more thing I just got to ask: who do you have winning the 2021 Stanley Cup?
I put Vegas right now. I think Vegas, I kept saying like every year they've been kind of like my favorite team to win it. They're big. They're all around just a really built team, but it comes down to my second pick to win would be Colorado. So whoever wins that matchup, if they both make it out of the first round, that's going to be the Stanley Cup. That's like the Stanley Cup finals in my opinion.
Very, very good.
I like that pick. And before we let you go, I'm going to start making this a thing where I ask every guest, if you can have a free paid trip to go watch the Blackhawks play on the road against any team in the National Hockey League, what would that team be?
It'd probably be a really bad game for the Blackhawks, but I'm going to go with Tampa Bay. I've been to a Tampa Bay game. I got some family down there, and that stadium is just so awesome. The environment's great. The fans are loud. They got the lightning coil in the building. It's an awesome place to be.
Absolutely. I think Joey's going to have to pay for me and you, the three of us, to go see a game down in Tampa Bay. He's been real hot with his betting lately. So I think a trip to Tampa Bay on Joey's dime is coming up for us.
I mean, I don't know about that, but I definitely would love to check out the Emily Arena. That's one of the probably top 5 buildings on my list as well. So I don't hate that pick at all, especially with the Tampa Bay Lightning and the power they have, the skill and the talent you want to see on the ice. That's a great answer.
Jimmy, do you like Tampa Bay? I know they're kind of taking care of Florida 2-0 in their series. You could give some analysis on Tampa Bay.
So that series is very interesting to me because, I mean, as a Blackhawks fan, I don't want to discredit Joel Quenneville. Mm-hmm. Like, when was Quenneville really the best as the Blackhawks coach in the playoffs? It was like games 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those were when the Blackhawks really did their best because Quenneville was a mastermind when it comes to like answering lineup questions that late in the series. He's great on the fly and he's great at kind of changing things up. Florida's a different team though. But I mean, Joel Quenneville's beaten Tampa Bay in the finals once, so who's to say that they can't overcome it again? Yeah.
If the Panthers could come back and win, I think that would be so cool. What were you going to say,
That'd
Jeff?
be awesome.
Yeah, I think that's a great take about Joel Quenneville. Like late in the series, like they're going over to Tampa now, being down 2-0, and it'll be interesting to see how Quenneville reacts here. And I wouldn't be surprised one bit if Florida makes this series interesting.
Remember when they were down 2-0 to the Blues and everyone thought the Hawks were out of it, and Joel was like, "I'm going to grab my junk on the bench and fire everyone up." And
didn't they win in 6?
They kind of reverse swept them there.
Yeah,
that was one of the best Blackhawks series ever. That was, I think it was 2014.
Maybe, I think it was. You knew they were going to go on a deep run after that, which they did.
Right.
They were the Alec Martinez goal off of Nick Leddy away from being in the Cup 3 straight years. It's crazy. So, Jimmy, promote everything you got going on real quick before we let you go.
Yeah, I mean, make sure you check out Oil on White at all Edmonton Oilers throughout the playoffs, and then obviously Blackhawk Up. We have a really good group, and it's a long off season. We're going to have a lot of stuff. So thank you for having me, guys.
Absolutely, and make sure you follow Jim R. Lynch on Twitter and Oil on White, and you could find Blackhawk Up as well. Those are all just such great sites. I love reading them, and the Blackhawks are kind of our thing, being Chicago guys, and the Edmonton Oilers are one of the most fun teams to watch in the history of the NHL right now. So make sure you're following Jimmy. He's keeping up with those great teams.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, Jimmy.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
After that, we will send it over to period number 2. What a great interview.
Absolutely. I think he killed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love talking about the Oilers and the Blackhawks.
Oh, yeah.
The Oilers
talking about the league. Like, it was even fun talking about Tampa there for a split second with him.
I'm glad he brought up Tampa because I know from knowing him that he's interested in covering Tampa Bay as well. And Tampa Bay's fun for everyone to cover. If I could cover him, I would. Yeah. When you have an elite squad like, with the Kucherovs and the Stamkos and Hedman, it's a lot of fun. So let's talk about the Blackhawks amongst us for a couple minutes here. Since our last show, absolutely nothing has happened with the team because they didn't make the playoffs, and they're kind of in that lull waiting for, I think, the Worlds to start, because I think once the World Championships start, you'll start seeing a couple Blackhawks make their way over there. I don't know the rosters from top to bottom, but you've had guys like Patrick Kane be the captain of Team USA. DeBrincat made it last year. I know the goalie. Finnish goalie.
Kevin Lankinen?
I don't know why his name slipped my mind.
I was like, who's he? Did he forget Lankinen there?
he kind of got known. Like, I drafted him in my fantasy league, the keeper league, because of how awesome he was for Team Finland.
Yeah.
So, I can't believe I forgot his name there for a sec. But, hey.
Yeah, I hope he goes because that's a good stage for him to play on.
Absolutely. And I kind of think it's good for development too. Like, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. I don't think they play on different size ice in the Worlds, right? It's the same size ice.
I think it depends who's hosting it.
Okay.
Kind of like the Olympics. Like, if the Olympics are in Sochi, they're playing on the bigger ice, but if they're in Vancouver, they're using NHL rinks.
Yeah, and it's not like these teams just had there was a very short schedule, condensed schedule, I should say. But it's not like you played a grueling, long 82-game season. Like, a lot of these guys should be ready to go for it, and I do think it is going to be a good chance to get out there and play some hockey as you're not in the playoffs.
Absolutely. Shout out to Joe Mandel, who just gave us a comment. Host of South Bribs Hitman. Make sure you check out that show every Monday night at 7:30. I want to say the time was. I've been filling in for Zim, who, congratulations from the BarDown Blackhawk Talk team on the birth of your child.
Yeah, congratulations.
So the Blackhawks are not competing in 2021-22. True or false?
False. By competing, when you say not competing, I think that it makes it seem like they're going to be, near the very bottom and just not have a chance to make the playoffs at any point in the season. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it'll kind of, sit in their hands. Whereas if they play consistent hockey, kind of like we saw in the first quarter of this season, I think they do have a chance to potentially be a bubble team next year in the full 82 game season, playing against every team in the league. And we'll see what they do in the offseason to help that. But I don't think it's going to be a completely uncompetitive year for the Chicago Blackhawks.
Absolutely. And I'm surprised to hear you say that. And I disagree, unfortunately. I don't see Jonathan Taves being healthy, making up 9 points in the standings. Now, this is if he's healthy. The rumor is that he's going to be and everything's going to be okay. But every year it keeps getting worse. And the defense isn't getting any better. Duncan Keith's going to be 38. The goaltending took a slide towards the end of the year. They led the league in 5-on-5 high danger chances against. That's not good. I don't see that. I don't see how anything can change between this year and next year that will change that. It's not like Alex Pietrangelo is walking through that door or anything like that. I have a hard time believing that things are going to happen that will just all of a sudden make them a potential playoff team.
I feel like there was a huge drop-off this year once they were mathematically eliminated, or once Dallas started playing really good and Nashville started playing. There was a drop-off there to where you can't look at that 9 points that they missed by as a measure of how much they really missed by, if that makes sense. I think there was a huge drop-off to the point where it's kind of irrelevant. I don't think there's any way that they show up next year a worse team than they were this year. So, I mean, if you're not worse, you're most likely going to get better. Like, I think Jonathan Taves is going to help the lineup tremendously. And you say he might not make up those 9 points, but it's less than 9 points because of the drop-off we saw. Maybe his insertion into the lineup picks up the players he's playing with, picks up everyone. It moves people down. I do think it helps the lineup, and there's no way they don't acquire at least some depth pieces in the offseason. I'm not saying they're going to go and get, their big, missing puzzle piece to make a cup run next year, but you're going to sign guys in the offseason that's going to help this team. I think Kevin Lankinen will have a bounce back year. I just don't see how they can be worse. And I think if you're not going to be worse, you're going to be better. So.
Okay, I want to agree with you, but I can't because I think they played a trick on us this year. I really do. They came in 6th place out of 8, right? What 2 teams finished below them?
Detroit?
Yes.
Columbus.
Detroit is in the Atlantic Division, and Columbus is in the Metropolitan Division. Who left the Central for the COVID year? Just so you don't have to think of it off the top of your head, I have them. It's the St. Louis Blues, the Minnesota Wild, and the Winnipeg Jets. Those are the teams that left the Central for other divisions. In 2021-22, the Seattle Kraken are going to join the Pacific Division, and that's going to force the Arizona Coyotes over to the Central. Now, we're going to play a little game. It's called, Is This Team Better Than the Blackhawks Going Into Next Year? Reply yes or no. Minnesota Wild.
No.
St. Louis Blues.
No.
Nashville Predators.
Yes.
Winnipeg Jets.
No.
Colorado Avalanche.
No.
Yeah, Colorado Avalanche. Dallas Stars.
Colorado's in their division?
Yeah.
So confused.
Dallas.
You mention
No, I didn't even mention them. You're right.
I was going to say.
Yeah, they come back too. Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah, that's a no. But
of course. And of course, yeah, I named them all. So, Arizona Coyotes.
yes. Arizona stink.
Okay, so you have the Blackhawks missing the playoffs by 2 spots.
Unless they get a wild card.
So you think
If the 2 wild cards come from the Central, it's possible.
Yeah,
Which
I don't.
is very possible.
For
If
one,
I-
I disagree that Nashville's worse going into next year.
Nashville can't score, and I don't see them. I think they're on the
They
down.
can score, but the Blackhawks can't defend, which is arguably just as important, if not more. And I think it's more of the division keeping them from competing. The Central's the best in the league. The Blackhawks, in my eyes, are the worst team in the Central going into next year.
But you also don't know how everyone's going to perform.
No, you're right. There's performance. I mean, games aren't played on paper. We talk about this in every sport. I think it's huge in football, especially because more often than not, the better team can win just based on who the quarterback is. But going into next year, it's hard for me personally. That's just my opinion, to see the Hawks being better than any of those teams. Like, the Central was good this year. The only teams that finished below them aren't even in their division, and the ones that were taken out are bona fide cup contenders in the Wild, the Blues, and the Avalanche. And the Jets, I guess, the Jets still are powerful up front, and they have the best goalie probably in the division, unless I'm forgetting someone.
Well, it's so hard. I'm so confused with like the new divisions and what they used to be. But I would not be surprised one bit if the 2 wild card teams come from the Central. Or is it 2 wild card teams? Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. But then you have to look at the Pacific. You think the Kraken are going to be a playoff team?
I think they're going to be a bubble team. I don't think they're going to suck. I never said a playoff team. I think they're going to be in the mix. Yes.
Okay.
So you got Vegas.
Edmonton.
Okay.
Some people like Vancouver going into the future.
No, I don't like Vancouver. That's what I was thinking. That's what made me think of that. I don't like Vancouver. I don't like Calgary. There's a lot of teams in there. Yeah, I don't like those teams. So
you don't like Calgary to bounce back?
No. I think both wildcard teams next year come from the Central, which is going to be the reason that the Hawks have a chance to make the playoffs next year. Or have a competitive season, which is what your question initiated.
Yeah, that's fine. I agree on your entire list, except I don't think they're better than Arizona or Nashville, because Nashville made it this year. They couldn't score, but they scored enough to make the playoffs.
They did.
Arizona just missed. They kind of had a disappointing year, I would say. And the Blues got really hot at the end.
So did Nashville. I would say Nashville got really hot too. Started playing out of his mind, and then the games that Pekka Rinne started, he was giving them vintage Pekka Rinne games. So it's like, I think you can look at them getting hot both ways. I don't know. And going into next year, because I don't see the Blackhawks not improving in the offseason. I don't care if they improve just a little bit. You're getting Jonathan Toews back, hopefully. We're gonna assume from now on that he's coming back and he's healthy.
Yeah,
because I think that's the plan. Patrick Kane is not going to degress. DeBrinket's going to be there. You're going to get a full season of Doc, and they're going to get pieces. I don't care if it's a bottom 6 guy or a bottom 6 defenseman, even
like a Janmark or a Soderberg.
Exactly. That stuff will help your lineup, and if they help their lineup just a little bit from the outside, the additions that they're getting from within is going to make this team better and more competitive than it was this year.
Yep, I see your point, and I hope you're right, because it's obviously better when they make it. And, this is kind of that fun little May talk about the season that starts in October. So many things are going to happen that could change either of our opinions. Mm-hmm. But, there's Jack Eichel that could come into the mix. The Kings are if the Kings land Eichel, I might peg them to be a playoff team. So, Vegas is Vegas. Seattle has varying opinions. We'll see what their roster looks like. But I don't know. I just have a hard time seeing them competing in the Central for what it's worth.
I think the lack of talent in the Pacific might help them out big time.
For sure. No doubt about it. I mean, when you go back and think about the Pacific Division, the way it was before, it's
hard to remember.
It was, because I forgot Colorado even for a second. Colorado's absolutely in the Central.
Yeah.
It's a weird feeling, because every team that made the playoffs from the West Division is from the Central, except for Vegas. So that to me is what makes it just so hard. And the Hawks are going to be playing against those teams the most. I think that can also hinder them. Most of their schedule is going to be Colorado, St. Louis, Dallas, Nashville, Winnipeg, Minnesota, who's all of a sudden a powerhouse now. So,
like you said, we'll see how this team and this kind of new look Blackhawks team matches up against teams that they haven't played in over a year, close to 2 years by next year. Like when they make their East Coast swing and play the Devils, Rangers, Flyers, like we don't know how they're going to match up against those teams. What if they're good?
absolutely. It's been a whole 2 years since they played them.
Exactly. The Hawks Rangers games, those were always like great games. So
yeah, no doubt. Now, I think I know your stance on this based on the answer. You're not rebuilding, even though it kind of looks bleak.
No, I don't think it looks bleak enough to the point where you just full on rebuild. I think there's a way to get it done. And I said this before, there's a way to get it done with the group that you have right now to do it kind of on the fly. And I'm not saying you're going to build, a Tampa Bay Lightning or a Colorado Avalanche like team, but you can build a very competitive roster from within with what you have to build off of right now.
See, it goes back to our last conversation. I don't see them competing. So for me, if that's the case, I'm even okay with allowing yourself a month or two into next season to figure it out, see where it's going to go, because we could both end up being right or wrong based on what transactions are made, how the offseason goes for teams around them. But if they start off 2021-22 stinky, I'm making big moves. Patrick Kane has a year and a half left, or at that point it would be a year and a half. Now it's 2 full seasons. It's at 10.5. The Hawks can afford to retain. They can get a haul for that guy right now. And getting a haul for that guy decreases every day. Do you at least agree with that?
No. Not right now every day. Maybe eventually every day, but
once next season starts.
It doesn't decrease at all, because whether the Hawks suck or not, whether they're in last place or not, Patrick Kane's going to be Patrick Kane, and he's still going to be just as productive, I believe. I don't think there's a cliff he's walking.
I'm not worried about a cliff. I'm talking about value on his contract being more than a rental. If a Colorado team or a New York Rangers team added Patrick Kane and had him for 2 years before the McKinnons of the world need a pay raise, the Mikko Rantanens, the Landeskog's, all those guys are on team-friendly deals. So if they added someone like Patrick Kane, they go from a cup contender to a super cup contender.
I guess, but I mean, I also think that the Hawks are going to have to start off like very, very bad and pretty much dig themselves a hole deep enough to where they can't climb out of in order to even think about trading Patrick Kane.
Yeah, I'm talking like last place by a lot by Thanksgiving.
Yeah. And do you really want to retain that for? You said there'd be 2 years left if they did it next year.
A year and a half.
So yeah, next year and then the year after. I mean, I think if things are bad next year, and yeah, it sucks. Like if you're gonna just sit here and just watch this team be bad, but like I don't see them getting put in that predicament, because I don't think it's going to be that way at the beginning of next year. But if it is, you play out next year, and even if they miss the playoffs, if you're going to trade Patrick Kane, I think you wait till that deadline push so you can retain most of the salary cap, help another team out. Who cares? Give them Patrick Kane, retain some, but you're going to get more of a return if it's that deadline move. Teams pay big money at the deadline to try to win that Stanley Cup. So if you're going to do it, that's the time to do it. Not next year. It's going to be the year after. But I also don't see it happening, because I do believe that the Blackhawks are going to be able to have a competitive season with Patrick Kane. And who knows, after the 2 years is up, who knows what happens? Who knows what kind of deal he signs after that, whether it be with the Chicago Blackhawks or not. I think it will be, and I don't think there's any way he gets traded.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a hard stance opinion I have. I certainly could see it going either way. I don't know if you're on that boat yet, but it just bugs me that they are in serious danger of not winning a single playoff series during the entire duration of Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane's contract extension that they're paying them $10.5 million each.
Yeah, I mean,
they won the Stanley Cup in 2015 and have won 3 playoff games since, no series.
But you can't put the blame on those guys.
No, I'm not.
So I mean, trading them isn't going to help anything.
Well, guys, 5 minutes each for fighting.
So you have.
I actually thought we were keeping this mild for how hard we disagree.
Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously have better takes as the offseason goes on and once next year starts. But The I don't think there's any writing on the wall to trade either one of those guys because I don't think Jonathan Taves is going to come back. I think he's going to come back and help the team more than he would hurt the team, which is why I think they'll be more competitive.
Sure, that's fair. I just hope the schedule with their Central Division isn't too grueling because that's tough.
It is tough. But it's so tough, and all the teams are good enough. I think that's why you're going to get those 2 wild card spots coming from that division.
Okay, so really quick to kind of put a bow on the actual Blackhawks portion of period number 2, what do you see happening and to make it more of a retool than a rebuild?
Just filling in a couple holes, having a better, bottom 4 defensemen than what they currently have. And like, there's a lot of guys that we saw play this year who I don't think really have what it takes to be on NHL roster. The first guy I think of is Stillman. I don't really see anything from him that I liked.
They like him.
I know they do, but like, and you're real high on Ian Mitchell. So I mean, if he develops nicely, like you never know. Like, all these guys growing and developing is going to add and help the team and not hurt it. So it's mainly up front for me. It's the full season with Kirby Dach. We know what kind of talent he is. We know how he can change the game when he's on the ice. And then Jonathan Taves coming back, shifting everyone down in the lineup and making everyone around him better. And then obviously you have DeBrincat and Kane. I just think there's something to build off of with that forward group. And hopefully Kevin Lankinen comes back and plays like he did when he earned that net, because that's what they need out of him.
For sure. I agree that all those things could happen. They need to prove to me that it will. Because, like you said, I like Ian Mitchell. I like BarDown a lot. Mm-hmm. I still believe, I stand by my opinion that if they made the playoffs this year, Jeremy Colleton would have gotten a nod for Coach of the Year. Maybe not win it, but like been nominated or in the top 5 for voting, just because he took a team that was supposed to be butt cheeks and made them, a playoff team. We see it all the time. The Coach of the Year is it goes to one of 2 types of guys. It either goes to the coach whose team was elite. We thought they were going to be elite, but they were even more elite than we thought.
Bruce Cassidy
last year, or Barry Trotz the year the Capitals won the President's Trophy. Or it goes to that guy who's like, hey, we thought you were going to suck, but you were actually really good, so here's the Coach of the Year. Like when Jerry Gallant won it for Vegas.
Or we all kind of thought Florida was going to be good, but like Joel Quenneville has a legit shot to win it this year.
I would say he's probably the favorite right now.
I'm going to give it to – I'm having a brain fart kind of like you did earlier with –
yeah, no, there is somebody else in the mix.
Carolina's head coach.
Oh, Rod Brindamore.
Yeah, I think that's a guy too who could.
Yeah, no, he said has a chance.
They were 2 points behind the President's Trophy. So
yeah, I think Dean Everson of the Minnesota Wild has a chance too, because he kind of fits in that. Hey, we thought you were going to be kind of stinky, like you're really good. Here's Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
So those are probably going to be 3 of the top 5 guys, I would say.
Mike Sullivan too. I mean.
My God, can't say enough nice things about Mike Sullivan. We'll talk about them in a minute, but that team, man, so where I was going with this, with Colleton getting a nod if they would have made the playoffs, with that said, I still kind of think they should fire him, because their system is so bad for their type of roster that it might be putting someone like me in a blender, because I think they stink and have no chance next year and are going to come in last place. Like, I truly believe that. It's not just me trying to debate with you on purpose to make it a debate show. I truly believe that. And I do think it could change, though, if they get a system that fits themselves. And being 31st out of 31 in high danger chances against that 5-on-5 is not going to make you competitive anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, you're making me excited for, the first 3 weeks of next year, and we still haven't even gotten a full week of playoffs this year. So let's finish this year. We'll talk about the playoffs, and you're making me excited for next year's home opener with the Chicago Blackhawks already.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll be there and get some content for this show.
Maybe.
So you brought up the playoffs. Playoffs. You want to talk about some playoffs?
Let's talk about some playoffs.
Talk about some playoffs. I know you're amped up and ready to go. Let's hit period 3. Welcome to period number 3, where my microphone is not muted to start the period. I want to talk some playoffs, man. We talked about some pizza. We talked about, the Blackhawks and the oil with Jimmy Lynch. We talked about the Blackhawks just amongst us. I know you're amped up and ready to go to talk some playoffs. Do you want to start with that series? I have all the series.
What do we start with? I don't know. I'm going to be smiling pretty much from ear to ear this entire segment. So we're going to save. Well, let's save it. Let's save.
I say last.
Yeah, we're going to save my series. We're going to save my series for last because we'll lead into, some goalie talk with that and just keep the jitters going because game 3 tonight, 5:30, we are at almost the 2.5 hour mark. I'm getting jacked.
Absolutely. Let's start with the Florida series.
All right.
Florida's a weird place. I like Florida. I don't know if I could ever live there. But the first game of that series kind of exemplifies the state as a whole. Crazy, fun. But coaches might have not appreciated the first game as much as they appreciated the second game, don't you think?
Yeah. I have a question for you before we get deep into this series. And yeah, Joel Quenneville later in the series could happen. Imagine thinking the Tampa Bay Lightning don't have a chance in this series. You got the defending Stanley Cup champions, had a phenomenal year all year long, missed Nikita Kucherov all year, missed Steven Stamkos for a decent portion of the year. Ryan McDonough wasn't 100%. And these guys, Ryan McDonough has been one of the best defensive shot blocking defensemen that we've seen yet in this playoffs. Nikita Kucherov is already putting the series on his back. Steven Stamkos is healthy, scored a goal yesterday. Andrei Vasilevsky's playing good. You told me that if Drieger plays, and I told you Sergei Bobrovsky is going to start game 1. That's what happened. We had a shootout in that game. Joel Quenneville comes back game 2 with Chris Drieger. Doesn't really help much. I expect Spencer Knight to make his playoff debut now, which will give the Florida Panthers their best chance. But the Tampa Bay Lightning have this series in such control. I don't think it's going to be close. I don't know what I picked. I can look for you, but I would be surprised if Tampa Bay loses more than 2 games, more than 1 game. There's no way the series doesn't end in 5.
Yeah, I mean, my logic was Florida dominated Andrei Vasilevsky this season. He had Vezina numbers against every other team, and then Florida, he had an under 900 save percentage. Victor Hedman is probably going to have off-season surgery. He's playing injured. Losing Aaron Ekblad was tough for Florida, but I didn't know how Nikita Kucherov would play in his first game back after not playing for the whole season. That is a thing. Some guys take a couple games to get their legs under them and be in true game shape. Mm-hmm. That happens, but not for Kucherov. He was in that first game. Bobrovsky, terrible. I cannot believe. I also said that Bobrovsky stinks on the last show, and I specifically remember saying it, whether it was off camera or on camera. I remember saying it, and I know I have that opinion. That I know paid and bad, and they should have started Spencer Knight from game 1. I would have had Drieger be the backup and had Bobrovsky's $10.5 million ass sitting from the press box.
I know you said that, and I know you said, your stance on the Florida, winning the series, but I told you that you need to make your pick right now, knowing that Sergei Bobrovsky is going to start because I knew that Joel Quenneville was going to start Bob in game 1. Yeah, I'm not saying I know that Spencer Knight's going to start. I have no idea what his plan is. I haven't looked. I don't know. I don't know if he's announced it. I think it would be a foolish mistake. You're down 2-0 in the series. Let the kid who's never lost in the NHL, youngest goalie to ever start 4-0.
Extremely high draft pick for a reason.
Extremely high draft pick. He's played on stage before with Team USA in the Worlds. Let him play against the Tampa Bay Lightning at Amalie Arena in Game 3. Spencer Knight. It'll be a story. I hope it happens, and I kind of hope that if they're going to win a game, I hope it's with Spencer Knight in that.
Yeah, and Joel hasn't ever shied away from changing goalies. Scott Darling was a former ECHL goalie who couldn't find a job, and Joel started him over Corey Crawford, who's a consistent Vezina Trophy candidate. He never won one, but he was always in the mix. Stanley Cup champion, all-world goalie. And the moment he kind of had a little fault, it's probably the only time in Corey Crawford's career that he was straight up bad, was the end of that. I want to say it was the 2015 season when they ended up winning the cup. And so he let Darling play and let Crawford kind of find himself, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So going forward, I hope the games are just a little more exciting than game number 2, because game 1 was so sweet. That's when hockey felt back to its original form, because Florida had a pretty full lower bowl. It felt like hockey from 2019. I don't know how you felt.
It did. I kind of felt that way when I watched. We'll talk about this probably in our next series. We're going to talk about. You want to just segue there?
Segue right into it.
Yeah, I felt that way when I saw Game 1, Carolina Nashville. I think they had a packed building.
Yeah, that was after, but I get the sentiment.
Yeah.
It felt like 2019 hockey.
It was a packed building in Carolina. The storm surge is back, and it's back with a vengeance, because I don't think this series is really going to be close. I don't think Nashville has what it takes. We kind of talked about them getting hot and getting into the playoffs and squeaking in, over Dallas and Chicago. None of those 3 teams, from what I've seen, have the matchup against Carolina. So, maybe Nashville did the Blackhawks a favor of disappointment, because I don't think this series is going to be close. Carolina just is better in every single way.
They have multiple stud forwards, which if you look at all the Stanley Cup contenders, Tampa Bay with Kucherov and Stamkos and Braden Point. The Bruins have Pasternak, Marchand, Bergeron, Taylor Hall. The Hurricanes are right there, man. They have Sebastian Aho, Teuvo Teravainen, Eric Stahl has been amazing. Andrei Svechnikov is one of the best power forwards in the league. Warren Fogel's awesome. There are so many just dudes that are so good that if you line them up from top to bottom, it's a Stanley Cup roster. And they have one of the best defense cores in the league too, which nobody really talks about. And to the common eye, people often say, well, if Carolina could only ever get goaltending. But when you look at the advanced statistics of their 2 goalies, which we'll get into goalies as a whole later with Joey's goalie talk, they're like some of the best goalies in the league.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how you want to do the goalie talk, because I have a lot of stuff on goalies that I can kind of just throw in as we talk about their playoff series.
Yeah, do you just want to make Joey's goalie talk like part of each series segment?
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, I got something on Alex Nedeljkovic, and he's the guy right now in Carolina. He's playing phenomenal. He's not giving anyone a reason to not put him in the net, and he is the first rookie goaltender to win a playoff game for Carolina since 2006. Who played in net 2006? It was Cam Ward. He won Rookie of the Year. The Carolina Hurricanes won the Stanley Cup. And if you're a fan of, seeing history be repeated, who knows? Maybe Alex Nedeljkovic is the guy for Carolina.
It's one of the tougher last names in the league to pronounce.
I know. I'm not
super long like Vasilevsky. I picked up Vasilevsky when he was drafted. Like, I was able to say it properly. This one's a little difficult.
Yeah. It's from looking at it. It's when you look at the word Nedeljkovic.
Yeah. It's not an aesthetically pleasing last name, but it's an interesting last name. And I'm kind of an advocate for like not messing up people's names. I hate when I do it. It gives me such a empty feeling. So I'm not even going to try right now until I get it down perfectly. I agree with everything you said. Carolina is a wagon. I have no reason to think anything else about them other than they are freaking awesome.
Yep.
You got anything else on that series?
Nope.
So we covered the Florida series and we got the Canes. How about the Vegas Golden Knights and the Minnesota Wild? The series of kind of the exact opposite of what we were saying with Florida, the series of no goals.
Mm-hmm. It is your definition, and it kind of got broken a little bit.
The period was a little...
Yeah, it kind of opened up. Once they got that first goal yesterday, Vegas comes down and just a laser shot by Marcia Sol, Minnesota's goal. So it was a goalie, every goalie fan's dream watching, especially game 1. Cam Talbot, I was wrong about him. I said that the Minnesota Wild as a team peaked too early, and Cam Talbot kind of, toward the end of the season, he just wasn't the Cam Talbot we saw, halfway through at the midpoint of the season when he was literally standing on his head. In game 1, he makes 42 saves and shuts out the Vegas Golden Knights to steal game 1 for them. And then in game 2, it seemed to be that way again, 0-0 going into the second period. And then the Wild get that first one, but then that kind of just opened up the floodgates and Vegas was able to really find their offense after their first goal, because it was all Vegas since then.
Yeah, I kind of figured that the entire discussion of Vegas versus Minnesota was kind of going to be like a mini Joey's goalie talk, because when you don't give up a single goal in an entire game, and then it goes to overtime where someone's going to score. But like in the grand scheme of things, nobody gave up a goal in regulation.
0-0. It's not.
Yeah, and then in game 2, Matt Dumba scored, and 18 seconds later, Marchessault tied it. So like, and now that Marchessault's going, and Alex Tuch is going, it's going to be tough for the Wild.
It is, especially I mentioned Cam Talbot and how phenomenal he's playing. Marc-Andre Fleury is just, at 36 years old, is doing everything that Father Time doesn't want him to do, and he looks like he's in true, vintage Pittsburgh form, making some of these saves. Marc-Andre Fleury's a guy I kind of feel bad for Robin Leonard, but I mean, Robin Leonard just wants to win. But right now it's Fleury's net to lose. It's everything about Marc-Andre Fleury and his success right now for the Vegas Golden Knights to win this series.
Is there an elite player in the history of the National Hockey League that had a stranger career than Marc-Andre Fleury? Let me run it down while you think about it. He was the number 1 overall pick in the 2003 NHL draft, which was the greatest draft in the history of the league, by far, second to none. He was the starter in Pittsburgh for a long time. He took a lot of flack early in his career for not living up to that number 1 status at first, mainly because the Pittsburgh Penguins were just a joke around him. And then Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin started to come along, and they were awesome, and Marc-Andre Fleury started to develop and become an elite goalie. And he stuck around. Pittsburgh won the Stanley Cup for the first time of 3 in the Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin era in 2009. Then he was elite further beyond that. And then in 2013, he was so good, and they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals before getting smoked by your Bruins. And then eventually in 2016, a young kid named Matt Murray came along, backed him up, eventually earned the starting job in the playoffs. Matt Murray led them to the Stanley Cup final and won. Then the following season, it came in with Fleury as the backup and Murray as the starter. But Fleury started the playoffs that season in 2017 due to an injury to Murray. And he had played so well that he got through the first 2 rounds while Murray was healthy enough to play, but they still went with Fleury. And then after one faulty game 1 of the conference finals that year, Murray came in, won the series, then won the Stanley Cup. So you can say out of Pittsburgh's 3 cups, Fleury won 1 by himself, Murray won 1 by himself, and then they split the third one, literally down the middle.
8-8, yep.
And then he was the most notable name taken by the Vegas Golden Knights in the expansion draft. And there he made it to the Stanley Cup final in year 1, and it took a magical Washington Capitals team to beat them in the Stanley Cup final. And then in 2019, he was elite again, and they lost to San Jose after the craziest Game 7, one of the craziest Game 7s in NHL history. And then in the bubble, they acquired Robin Leonard right before the COVID-19 pause, and in the bubble, Leonard was clearly the better goalie, and they went with him all the way to the conference finals. And now here we are in 2021. Fleury's been the better of the 2 goalies between him and Leonard, and he looks like a stud again.
What was your question?
That's a crazy career.
It's a crazy career, but it's what you expect when you draft a goalie number 1 overall. Like, you have the 3 cups. I don't care if he was the starter or not. He was a big part of those teams. I wouldn't say crazy is the right word. It's what you get when you have a Hall of Fame goaltender. That's what a Hall of Fame goalie's career looks like. It's all over the place.
It's strange. He's gotten his job stolen twice by goalies who are probably inferior to him in the grand scheme of things.
That's possible for a goalie. It's what happens with goalies. It's how you respond to it. And Marc-Andre Fleury just might be the best at responding to it that we've ever seen. Jonathan Quick isn't necessarily the number 1 guy in LA anymore. He's been a phenomenal goalie throughout his career. He's got 2 cups, but
probably going to be a Hall of Famer.
Exactly. Is he responding well to losing his job? He's really not, because now when he comes in, he still kind of sucks. Henrik Lundqvist, I pray that he comes back from his heart surgery a good goalie. I would love to see him be a good goalie when he comes back 100% healthy. We'll see how he responds to losing his job. We've never seen him play anywhere other than New York. Braden Holtby kind of didn't respond that well. So it's kind of like saying if Braden Holtby was able to respond the way Fleury did, then it would be the same thing. Let's say Holtby went over to Vancouver and just was lights out, like vintage, like 2015, 16 Braden Holtby. Like, okay, he responded well to losing his job. He came back and he bounced back, and that's exactly what Fleury did. He just did it twice in his career.
Yeah, I would say both times, though, that Fleury lost his job, Murray and Leonard, I would say none of them were because he was bad. It was because the other guy was good.
Exactly. That's a good point.
Holtby, though. Holtby was bad. He lost his job. Stunk. Fleury just kind of got, I don't want to say stabbed in the back. We all remember that image from the playoffs that his agent released last year during the bubble. That was really funny. But you're right. He's just a phenomenal,
he doesn't give up. Exactly. Some guy can lose that starting job and just like, they're going with me now. I guess I'm a number 2 now. I'm on the decline. No, Fleury, he still puts every effort when he does get the chance, and that's all you need. You need to put a string together. You need to string together a good effort of games, and you'll win your job back. It's that simple. That's what he did down the stretch for Vegas, and look at him now.
Absolutely, it's good to see, because we're both Fleury guys, and absolutely. It's good to see him have success. I like watching this right now, and I hope he's able to keep it up.
Yeah,
a while to win the cup in my bracket, contrary to what I said on the show.
Yeah, one quick note before we move on to the next series. I think Mark Stone is suffering from the loss of Max Pacioretty.
Big time.
Max Pacioretty, he was such an underrated player for the Vegas Golden Knights this season. He led them in scoring. He is their guy. He actually had a better season than Alex Ovechkin. So in pretty much every way, he had a better season than Ovi, a regular season.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to take away Ovi from the Capitals, like you're like, oh, they're without a big piece. Well, no one's really talking about the fact that they're without their best player. Whether it's Mark Stone or Max Pacioretty makes Mark Stone better, because Mark Stone really hasn't impressed me offensively. He's obviously been phenomenal defensively. He could very well be the first winger to win the Selke Trophy since 2003.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So they're really missing Max Pacioretty. I hope he comes back soon, because that'll really help the Vegas Golden Knights in this series.
Yeah, I would say he's really missing him on the offensive side of things. I watched that game with both eyes on the screen the entire game. Mark Stone is elite defensively. You touched on it. Mm-hmm. I saw him make multiple plays where he just picked off passes, took it the other way. It's nice to have a super duper two-way guy on a wing, because he can score, he could play defense. He's Marian Hossa reincarnated. I don't know if he's going to be quite the Hall of Famer offensively that Marian Hossa was, but if there's any guy in the league right now active that is the closest thing to Marian Hossa, it's Stone.
I do think he's better defensively than Marian Hossa.
Wow.
Defensively, not offensively. I'm taking Marian Hossa's offense any day, but defensively, yeah, I would say Mark Stone is up there with the great center Selke trophies of the past decade.
That's some really high praise.
Yeah.
Marc-Andre Fleury's old team, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Really tight one with the New York Islanders. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing series.
I think we should stick with the division. Let's finish that division first. Colorado, St. Louis? Or do you want to just go?
Yeah, why not?
Or if you want to go Pittsburgh Islanders.
Yeah, let's just do Pittsburgh Islanders. Right. We really touched on it. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing series, I would say, just because the Islanders are kind of boring to watch. I mean, I watch it because I love hockey, and I watch college and junior and all of it, but the Islanders, they kind of suffocated the Penguins in both games, but Pittsburgh managed to win the second one, and a lot of it had to do with a weird shot going in by Brian Rust. Otherwise, it would have been a 1-1 tie. I like the Penguins in the series, but it's tough.
Yeah, you talk about that shot. It was the first goal of the game. It was very early. You're talking about the one on Varlamov yesterday, right?
Yep.
And Varlamov didn't start game 1, right? Sorokin did? Sorokin did. Varlamov, I think, down the stretch was the better goalie. I don't think he was healthy enough to play in game 1. They ended up winning the game. Sorokin played pretty good. And then Varlamov comes in for game 2, and in that shot, I was like, this is not good for Varlamov. This is gonna be a long game. If that's the case, like, he just missed it. He flat out missed it.
Yeah.
And Pittsburgh, they come back and they answer again. They go up 2-0, and I don't know. I don't think the Islanders can beat the Pittsburgh Penguins. Yeah, they did it in game 1. Kyle Palmieri kind of won that game for them. He scored a goal in regulation. He had that perfectly placed overtime shot right over that corner. And everyone's talking about Tristan Jarry's glove, and he can't catch the puck on his glove side. And yeah, there was a backhand shot yesterday that was glove side, but I don't know why you're making a story out of it, because I don't think it's anything to really worry about. Yeah, there's the game 1 that maybe wasn't the best. It's behind you. The Islanders won it. You can't really blame that OT goal on being glove side. And then that backhand yesterday, you can't really blame that on gloves. Like, backhands are just so hard to read for a goalie. I think the Penguins have everything that they need to beat the Islanders. I don't think it's going to – from what I saw yesterday, I don't think it's going to necessarily be as close as I thought going into it.
That makes sense. The Islanders clearly went to school on what happened in game 1, because every single puck they shot was on Jarry's glove, and they only scored once. So how bad can it actually be?
Exactly.
And you're right. It was a backhand, and backhands could go anywhere.
It was like a quick backhand.
Yeah, it was really nice. The Kyle Palmieri OTGWG was a rolling puck that he kind of like corralled and shot in one motion. And Kyle Palmieri, tough year coming over to the Islanders from the Devils, but he's been one of the better goal scorers in the NHL for the last 5 or 6 seasons. So he knows how to score 5-hole, oppo, glove, no matter what it takes.
Yeah, it's got to be good for both teams' general managers, because I think the deadline acquisitions for both of these teams is really paying off in this series. Specifically, Kyle Palmieri looks great, and Jeff Carter, he looks unreal. I think he's doing a really nice job in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, they've been without Evgeny Malkin both games because of injury, and we all know how good Gino is. He's one of the 20 best players in the NHL. I would still say people don't give him enough credit anymore, because you got to be on the ice for people to see and respect you. But Jeff Carter's been doing really well. In the Islanders' win, all of their goals were scored by Palmieri and Pajot, which was their 2019-2020 trade deadline acquisition, right before the season got canceled, obviously. So Lou Lamoriello's trade deadline acquisitions have been providing some offense for them in the playoffs this season.
Yep.
What do you got for the rest of the series? This is a portion of the the series where you're allowed to flip based on what you've seen.
Yeah.
Like me with Florida, like it's hard for me to see Florida coming back from down 2-0 against the champs. Like I'm not an idiot, but like, what do you got? It's 1-1, so it could go either way.
It's 1-1. We're headed back to Long Island now for game 3. I believe that's tomorrow night, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like Pittsburgh. I think I actually like my initial pick. I have Pittsburgh in 6. I'm looking at my bracket right now. I have Pittsburgh in 6, and I'm sticking with it. I wouldn't be surprised if the Islanders win one more. They get one of those games where Pittsburgh just doesn't have the start that they're looking for. But I think that's the key. If Pittsburgh can get the start that they're looking for and not get if the Islanders don't have that chance to grab that lead early and play their lockdown system, then I think that's big for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I think they can do it.
Do you have my prediction from the show?
I just have my playoff bracket that I created. I don't have our show predictions. I think they're pretty close.
Yeah, I would say so. I know I picked the Penguins, but I pick the Penguins every year, and they could be the worst team in the league, and I still pick them blindly. You wanted to touch on the Blues Avs? Let's touch on the Blues Avs.
Yeah. I'll be honest, there's really not much to touch on. I don't think I think Colorado is practicing.
It's crazy.
It is. Like Jordan
If you're a fan of another team, like if you're a Bruins fan, like we'll touch on them in a second, obviously. They're playing in the cup against the Avs. I mean, you can't be feeling good.
I'm an Avs. I consider myself an Avs fan. They're probably my third favorite team. We all know how much I love Cale Makar, and he's a playoff guy.
You named your automobile after him.
I did. So seeing him, he scored. Nathan McKinnon is 100% healthy, and then you got just Landeskog chucking knuckles over here. That was a fun game to watch, and I don't think Jordan Binnington played that bad, but even a good game from Binnington isn't enough to stop the Colorado Avalanche, and I think that's going to be the case with most of the games that they play. I have them losing in the Stanley Cup final. So
the Avalanche played so well that Binnington looked like trash in a game that he played well in.
Exactly. Like,
that's how good the Avalanche are. Who led the Colorado Avalanche in scoring this season?
I believe it was Mikko Rantanen.
It's a very smart boy you are, because most people would just assume it was McKinnon. Rantanen led them in scoring.
I think
we didn't even mention him. It's ridiculous how much firepower they have. Nate's a better player, and having one less point than Rantanen doesn't mean that's not true. Nate's probably the second best player in the league behind McDavid, or Draisaitl and Crosby and Matthews. There's just so much good talent, but he's amongst the second best players. It's McDavid, and then we can argue for 4 hours over who the next best player is. McKinnon's in that conversation for anyone who watches the game closely, though.
Yeah, but credit to the coaching staff and the medical staff of the Colorado Avalanche for really managing Nathan McKinnon, because he was not 100% healthy down that final stretch of the regular season. In Colorado, they did what was right and they rested him. Mm-hmm. They needed to win both of their regular season games to win the President's Trophy and secure home ice throughout the entire playoffs.
Yeah.
And they did that without Nathan McKinnon. They let him sit out. They rested him. They was like, Nate, we need you 100% healthy for the Stanley Cup playoffs. Whether he is healthy 100% or not, he's healthy enough to really, put his team on his back. He is the best player on the team. I know Rantanen led them, but McKinnon did miss a lot of time, and he just has enough talent around him to really, pick up the slack when he's not there. And now that he is there, this team is they look unbeatable. And I'm not saying they're going to win 16 straight here. It just doesn't happen. But as long as they're getting the good play from the phenomenal defense that they have, the amazing offense that they have, and Grubauer playing the goaltending that could potentially get him in the Vezina conversation this year, then you look at hole-less teams, I don't really see a hole in the Colorado Avalanche right now.
I couldn't agree with you more. They're just fun. We talked about the Islanders not being aesthetically pleasing. The Colorado Avalanche are a hockey fan's dream. They have multiple elite forwards. Like when Nazem Kadri's your seventh best forward, you're good, man. And it's fun to watch. It's as fun to watch as any team as I can. Like, we talk about the Oilers as being fun to watch, but you could take your eyes off the screen for half that game. Like when McDavid and Draisaitl aren't out there. Like, I like Nugent Hopkins. I think he's a great player, but he's just a great player. He's not a great player. Mm-hmm. And the Avalanche, they could roll out four lines and they're all fun to watch. Their defense is so good. The goalie's very good. And the goalie doesn't even need to be a top 10 guy. He just needs to be slightly above average and they can win the cup.
Yeah, but I think Grubauer is a top 10 guy. He's been playing phenomenal.
Yeah, I bet the Caps wish they had him right now.
Oh, yeah, big time. Do I say the word phenomenal too much?
It depends. If you're calling things that aren't phenomenal, then yes. But if something's phenomenal, you drop it on them.
I feel like I've said it at least 6 times in the past 30 minutes.
There are a lot of phenomenal things in the NHL, and that's what we try to produce here on BarDown Blackhawk Talk and let people know.
Well, I know one more series that's pretty phenomenal.
Take it away.
Where do I start? We have the Boston. What?
You've been waiting for this moment for your whole life.
I have a little mental countdown because it's a weird puck drop. We have a 5:30 puck drop tonight, Game 3. So we got 2 hours and 10 minutes left, and I'm counting it down. The series is tied 1-1. Both games go to overtime. The last game. Yeah, I mean, you were in the same house as me. Have you heard me scream in enjoyment that loud? When was the last time? It had to be a Game 7 overtime versus the Leafs or something.
2019 big goal
Yeah,
against the Hurricanes or something. Even the
yeah.
Blues.
I mean, they kind of that series was never really close, so the emotion wasn't necessarily there.
Maybe the Blues.
Those games against the Blues, that's the Stanley Cup final. Obviously, they won Game 6 to send it to Game 7, I think. But when my guy Taylor Hall, he's on my team. He is nowhere else. He's not on the Devils. He's not on Buffalo. He's not playing in the bubble for Arizona. And he's not sucking. He is Taylor Hall. He's MVP Taylor Hall. I tweeted when the Bruins were down 3-4, or in the last game, they were down 2-3. I sent a tweet out, Taylor Hall, do your thing. 5 minutes later, Taylor Hall did his thing. He ties the game, sends it to overtime, where Brad Marchand scores the fastest overtime goal in franchise history. This team is approaching 100 years old. Fastest overtime playoff goal in franchise history, passing up Bobby Orr's goal in 1970. In this series is tied 1-1, going back to the TD Garden, where the last time a playoff game was played in that building. Game 7, Stanley Cup final. They lost. The emotions were high. There were tears. The Boston Bruins are ready to take control of this series tonight. I really don't have much more to say other than bring it on. 2 hours left. I am so excited for Game 3.
I want you to say something about the Washington Capitals that's nice about them right now.
Zdeno Chara is bringing the leader.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I guess I kind of forgot about them. I do have something about them, and that's this series is close, and it's going to be close regardless of who's in net. And right now we have Craig Anderson in net. Craig Anderson, he was drafted by the Chicago Blackhawks, over a decade ago, close to 2 decades ago. Local kid. He is 39 years old. Early happy birthday to him. He turns 40 years old on Friday. Game 4 on Friday. He turns 40 years old. He is the oldest goalie to play in the playoffs since
Martin Brodeur
in 2012, where he lost in the Stanley Cup final to Los Angeles. And the last time Craig Anderson was in the playoffs was 2017, where he lost in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Pittsburgh Penguins in double overtime. A series earlier that year for Ottawa, he beat the Boston Bruins in 6 games. Now, Craig Anderson, I don't care how old he is. I don't care, how many games he's played in the regular season. He's only played 4. He is playing some good hockey in front of the Washington Capitals. He's stepping up. I don't think you can necessarily blame him for their loss on Sunday or on Monday. Was it Monday? I don't even know what day it is. I go by Game 3. Today's Game 3 day. That was Game 2 day. I don't know what day it is. Game 2, he played good. Yes, the overtime goal, you can say it was a very far cross ice pass from Matt Grzelcyk over to Brad Marchand, and Brad Marchand pretty much had an empty net still, even though the pass was so far. There was a lot of traffic. I don't think that was necessarily his fault. That was a laser beam one-timer from Brad Marchand. I am worried about every time, the Capitals take it into the zone, they have weapons. TJ Oshie, he's a playoff guy. You could see he plays with raw emotion. Tom Wilson, he scares me because I don't know if he's going to, kill one of my guys or put the puck in the net. And then you have Alex Ovechkin, who just plays. He opened up the series in Game 1 with a huge hit on David Krejci, kind of setting the tone in that building. But the Bruins responded well, and they're getting depth scoring. And I don't even think we've really even seen their top line, play to their capabilities. They had a few points in the last game, but wait for them to really, find it. And it's just been such a good series. I'm excited for Game 3 tonight.
Yeah, I'll mostly let you handle the coverage of Caps Bruins, but I will say that once the perfection line really gets their legs under them and starts going the way we know that they can, I want to see Pasternak score. I want to see Bergeron continue to score. Marchand is just an unbelievable player. Like, he's really making a Hall of Fame, like, elite player. That's out the window. Like, of course he is. Hall of Fame is where we're starting to think about Marchand in terms of his future. It's been fun to watch. The Bees are so good. They've been one of the more consistently successful organizations in hockey over the last 10 years. And it's really cool to see. You know, this is an interesting series. Both teams are elite. Both teams have won the cup in the last decade or so with their current cores. So I'm enjoying the series a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Another note, Jake DeBrusk. I don't care how he played in the regular season, and I don't care how he ever plays in the regular season. If he's going to play like this in the playoffs, he's got to be a Boston Bruin for a long time and he knows it. I don't know why he sucked in the regular season. He was not good. He got moved down to the fourth line. Then the regular season ends, and he puts a picture on Instagram of a black and white picture of himself, like walking onto the TD Garden ice of his jersey. And he said, and the caption was like, "When it matters." Like, this guy knows, okay, yeah, I wasn't that great, but now it's playoff time. It's my time to shine. He has the opening goal for them in both games 1 and 2. We'll see what he does tonight back at the TD Garden. Expect that place to, be loud. I don't know how many people. I believe it's just going to be the 25% capacity or whatever. Jake DeBrusk, let him keep doing his thing. And then with the addition of him getting third line scoring, you got Taylor Hall on the second line. You have that perfection line that you mentioned. And, the fourth line is holding their own. Yeah, Washington's going to score. I would say the key is to stay out of the box. Washington's power play is very dangerous. One thing that I've seen a lot in this series, you're going to think that, he only watches, the Bruins. I watch every series. I know about every series. I watch these games with a little more, in tune. As you can see, I got all my Boston stuff. One thing about the officiating, I hate that come playoff time, and I know you're going to agree with me, that they kind of let them play a little more. When there's clear as day a penalty and they let them play. We saw it yesterday in the Vegas game. Like, there was a clear as day, like, tripping call, and they just don't call it because they want to let them play. But you can't play all regular season calling the game a certain way to then come playoff time kind of change it up. What's your thought on that?
Well, it's inconsistent because yesterday the Wild were trying to tie it with the extra attacker, and they nailed Kirill Kaprizov with tripping.
Yeah, he stuck it. I mean, you can't not call that.
That was blatant tripping, and it's like, if you don't call that, then you're just clearly calling things differently in the playoffs, which is stupid. To me, it's similar to like the argument about in college football having different rules than the NFL. Like, you're prepping them for the NFL. Like, why would you have different rules? It's the same thing in hockey. You're prepping for the playoffs, so why would you have different rules?
Exactly. And then another thing I've seen, and I don't know if it has to, I think it does have to do with things getting ugly with Tom Wilson and kind of the way they handled that New York Rangers Washington Capitals game toward the end of the season. It seems like a lot of scrums, and it favored Boston in game 2. I will openly admit it. The officiating favored Boston in game 2. A lot of these scrums where two players are going at it, and then like one of them's not really going at it, but another guy does something. All series long, I think there were like 4-on-4 chances. Both games, the ref, he points to both of them and says, "You're both going." That's the theme of this series, is you're both going. Look for that in game 3, because it just seems like the refs aren't dealing with it in this Washington-Boston series. There's been multiple times where there's barely anything going on, and the ref just sends them both. So a lot of 4-on-4 play in this series, more than any other series. One example specifically I'll say is Brad Marchand behind the net. He was getting into it with Anthony Mantha, and Anthony Mantha was not having any of it. He did not engage one bit. And the ref was in between him, and Marchand kind of uses his stick and kind of taps Mantha's face with the blade of his stick around the ref. And Mantha literally didn't do anything, and the ref points to both of them and sends them both to the box, and it was 4-on-4. Like, yeah, you're losing Marchand for Mantha, which is not a good trade for the Bruins. But it was kind of funny. When Marchand gets into it like that, he plays his best hockey. We saw him win it in overtime right away. So expect that. But I don't agree with the officiating I've seen in the first round of this series so far. Well, hopefully it changes, but I don't agree with the whole calling it differently than you've called it all regular season long.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. You're playing for the playoffs. The playoffs should just be officiated the same way. I understand not wanting to, like, impact the game as much. Like if something's borderline, maybe don't call it just because it's the playoffs, especially if it's late in the game. But if something is blatant, then you gotta take care of your business if you're a referee.
Exactly. Also, I know I keep saying one more thing, and I know there's not many Bruins fans who are necessarily going to be watching or listening to this, but I am sick and tired of hearing people. I'm sick and tired of hearing people say to start Jeremy Swayman or Tuukka Rask has a short leash. I don't care if that's the case. It's Tuukka Rask's net. He's the best goalie for the team, and he's going to give them the best chance that they have to win. If they were losing, if they were down 0-2 going into the game series, yeah, I would say Tuukka has a very short leash tonight. But no, Tuukka's been playing great. I don't care how many goals he gives up. The series is tied 1-1. Jeremy Swayman is the backup. Jeremy Swayman might make an appearance in this series, whether it be in relief of Tuukka Rask. It depends on the game. But for people to say that they want to see Swayman be starting in some of these games, give Tuukka a chance. He got you here. He is your number one goalie for a reason. He's a Hall of Fame goalie. He has the best stats, both goals against and save percentage amongst active goaltenders in the entire league. People, Boston fans specifically, who shit on Tuukka Rask ought to be ashamed of themselves.
I couldn't agree more. Like, how dare you give up a goal to Alex Ovechkin?
Exactly. It's Tuukka's net. Tuukka's my guy. I expect a big game from him, regardless of the, silly Boston fans like him or not. He's my guy. He's my favorite player. He always will be. And it's time for him to win that cup.
Absolutely. No, that was some great analysis on the Bruins. Clearly, they're the most passionate team you care about in the Stanley Cup playoffs, even though I think we went over the rest of the series pretty well. The Canadiens haven't started yet. The Edmonton Oilers versus the Winnipeg Jets, and then the Montreal Canadiens versus the Toronto Maple Leafs. We touched on them a little bit with Jimmy Lynch. They're going to start tonight, Edmonton and Winnipeg, and then tomorrow, Montreal versus Toronto. They're going to be a little drier than the rest of the series because there's not going to be many fans. I think Montreal's the only one allowing some fans. That's Canada for you right now, though. To end it, do you have them kind of having an advantage or a disadvantage based on the delayed start and or no fans?
I don't think there's really an advantage or disadvantage on the start. Yeah, they're starting game 1 when a lot of teams are moving to game 3. If you look at the end dates for all the series, they're all kind of around the same time. And there's no back-to-backs in these series. I know there was some talk going into it that would these teams have to play, back-to-backs in the playoffs with the circumstances, and that's not the case. It's every other day, just like it is for most teams. Yeah, there could be a little bit of delay if one of these games goes 7 or something, and then another series, gets swept. But I mean, that's playoffs for you. I really don't think there's too much of an advantage or disadvantage. If anything, you want everyone to be healthy, and it's like that for all 4 teams. It's not like one team just got done playing and one team starting right away. They have all been waiting the same amount. So
yeah, we'll see how the no fans impacts the third round, as opposed like if Carolina's playing Edmonton, like one might have crazy fans at home and the other might not. But in terms of the late start, yeah, not really, especially if Toronto and Edmonton both kind of take care of their series quickly while the others go a little long. They'll catch up relatively quick. The second round shouldn't be too much impacted by it.
Yeah, I mean, I know we touched on our predictions last week when we gave a full playoff preview. Toronto and Edmonton, those are going to be the 2 winners, I believe, of their respective series. But with that being said, I know we talked about with Jimmy that Edmonton, a sweep. I wouldn't be surprised, maybe 5. Toronto, though, that's going the distance. I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if Montreal, pulls it out. Cole Caulfield's been really fun to play. I think he's going to be what?
Kakko, Niemi, and Caulfield are being benched. They're not playing. The Canadians are acting like a bunch of old geezers and benching all the youngsters in favor of the savvy veterans.
That is so Claude.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Granted, I love Claude. He's the winningest coach in Bruins history, but Claude Julien just doing Claude Julien. I mean, they'll make their appearance. I mean, either way, I do think he'll make his way into the lineup. Cole Caulfield, I'm pretty high on that kid. But, Tyler Toffoli, Nick Suzuki, they're going to do their thing, bring what they've brought all year. And I think they're going to make it tough on the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Absolutely. You got anything left on the rest of the playoffs before we end it?
Yeah, we're over the 2 hour mark. We got 2 hours to game 3. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Joey Parisi. I'll be live tweeting this game. Even if you don't care about, the Bruins specifically, it's entertaining stuff, I feel. So
Yeah, and make sure you catch the Mike North Advantage tomorrow morning at a special time, 8 a.m. And one of the reasons it's a special time is basically my fault, because we have a very special guest coming on Crosstown Crosstalk, which is the baseball show that we host every Thursday at 2 p.m. And I think some people are going to be pretty excited when they see who comes on the screen tomorrow at 2 p.m. So make sure you tune in to Crosstown Crosstalk. You have South Burbs Hitman, Bulls 101. There's so many great podcasts on the Barroom Network, so make sure you check it out. Follow them on Twitter. Follow at Vinnie Parisi for me, at Joey Parisi for him. And this was a great show. I truly enjoyed talking about hockey.
absolutely. I mean, next Wednesday we'll have probably some round ones finished, maybe. So, I mean, I can't wait. We got baseball tomorrow, so a lot of fun stuff happening in baseball. So be sure to tune in to Crosstown Crosstalk.
And if you want to see me get as mad as you've ever seen a human being get in your whole life, make sure you tune in tomorrow. That's a promise from me to you.
He's already sweating just thinking about it.
Seriously, it's hot in here. So I'm excited. For Joey, I'm Vinny. Thank you so much for listening.